What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Wrestling with Johners. This is episode 73, and we've got a bit of a bumper episode. We're trying a slightly new format. Things we're shaking things up on the Wrestling with Johners podcast, and as you may have seen on my social media earlier on in the week, we're adding AEW to the mix. So we're going to be covering AEW Dynamite every single week, and with the scheduling changes recently, with AEW coming into the mix on a Wednesday, NXT not always being readily available until we watch it on the WWE Network until Thursdays now. We're going to keep NXT UK in there, but it means that the podcast is now shifting from, we sometimes did it on a Thursday, but mostly Friday, and now it's going to be every single Saturday. So the Wrestling with Johners podcast will be dropping every single Saturday, and it will now be included AEW Dynamite. So it's going to be a bumper episode. It'll be interesting to see how this one goes. Myself and my guest host were talking off air about how much wrestling we've had to watch this week just to be prepared for the podcast, and we'll talk to our very special guest host very, very soon. But first, as I like to do every single episode, just to throw out our social media plugs so you know where to find us if you want to interact with the Wrestling with Johners podcast. If you want to interact and get in touch with myself, you can do on Twitter. First of all, go on to Twitter and find us. Our Twitter handle is @withjohners_pod. That's @withjohners_pod. On Instagram, you can find us. Just search Wrestling with Johners. That's instagram.com/Wrestling with Johners. And of course, go out and search our ever popular, fun and interactive and friendly Facebook community page, Wrestling with Johners. Just go on to Facebook and search Wrestling with Johners, and that's Johners spelled JOHNERS, in case you weren't sure. And of course, if you enjoy listening to this podcast, please don't forget to hit subscribe so that you can be notified every time a new episode drops. This, in my opinion, is your only podcast that you need for all of your weekly NXT, NXT UK, and AEW all-round wrestling needs, basically. We do cover WWE pay-per-views and AEW pay-per-views, with the next AEW pay-per-view coming out on the 9th of November, which is going to be AEW Full Gear. And then, of course, we've got WWE Survivor Series coming up later on November as well. And I may cover the Crown Jewel event, which is happening from Saudi Arabia on the WWE Network at the end of this month, of course. But so many podcasts, so many things to cover, so much great wrestling. It really is a great time to be a wrestling fan. So please spread the word. Give us a follow on all of our social media pages to start off with. That'd be great. On all the links I gave you earlier on for Twitter, Instagram and Facebook, and subscribe to the podcast and to the YouTube channel, and help us to get even more people listening to the Wrestling with Johners podcast. You know you want to, so just go and subscribe and start following the Wrestling with Johners podcast. So I want to introduce you to our special guest today. He's been on the podcast before, and he's helped us cover NXT and NXT UK. But our special guest has been asked to cover 5 hours of wrestling ahead of coming on the podcast today, and that's Ashleigh Clements. So, Ashleigh, welcome back to the Wrestling with Johners podcast. Great to have you back on, buddy.
Thank you for inviting me back there, John.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, as you said, watching 5 hours of content this week, it's a bit hard going, but managed to get through it all.
Yeah, well, it's a good job that I don't review Raw and SmackDown on top of this, really. Cause,
an extra 5, 10 hours
that's
a week.
It, crikey. But,
Pro main event at 205 Live, that's another 2 hours.
Well, this is it. It'll be the longest podcast in the world. And this episode might still be the longest podcast in the world. But I really appreciate you joining us. Now, you joined us a little while ago, and we actually had the opportunity to meet one another in Cardiff, because we met up before Takeover Cardiff, and that was a hell of a show, a hell of a weekend. And we haven't spoken since then. But more recently, you've caught a few Progress shows, and last weekend you went to Chapter 96 in Manchester, and it was Real Friends Stab You in the Front, or some subheading to that effect. But what was your Progress experience from Manchester like from last Sunday then, Ashleigh?
Overall, it was a very good show. It's the second time I've been to the Ritz to see Progress. Slight venue change. They've moved, like where they normally have the merch area, to a different location. They've added 2 new bars, which is kind of easy to gain access to. Some highlights from the show. I'll give you 2 highlights matches, which were both the opening contest between the Young Guns and Pretty Deadly. It's the first time I've seen Young Guns in person. I've heard quite a fair bit of them.
Yeah, that's Ethan Allen and Luke Jacobs, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, yeah. And it was for two teams making their official chapter debuts. It exciting to see, and literally it was a great way to start the card off. And the other match, which is having next week, getting the second installment of it, which was either Dragunov versus Carnoir.
Yeah, two kind of quite intense. Well, you got the intensity of Dragunov, and then you got the kind of the flamboyance of the Cara Noir. But I haven't seen a lot of Cara Noir. Now, I did catch it when I saw Still Chasing and
the Natural Progression Series.
Yes, NPS from the Saturday, and he really impressed me. And he's probably got one of the best entrances of any wrestler in the UK at the moment. And he's got a pretty good. He's pretty good in the ring as well, actually. So that must have been a hell of a match. Tell us a bit about that one.
It was a very good match. Both guys, when it first got announced, thought, "Oh, this is going to be interesting, different, different class of styles." But also, you've got two different similar kind of entrances where you've got long, prolonged entrances, which kind of benefits their characters. And it's going to be interesting to see if they can top their match they had last week for next week's show as well.
Yeah, and you had Paul Robinson defending his Proteus championship for the first time, I understand, against Travis Banks. Now, Paul Robinson's kind of gimmick or stipulation that he's added to the Proteus championship is that you can only beat him by knocking him out, essentially. Is that right?
You can only win via knockout or submission.
Yeah.
But Robinson can retain the title as well if his opponent decides to, for some reason, to hold the title, try use the title as a weapon.
Right.
If they do so, that's an instant disqualification, and Robbo will retain. Okay. So theoretically, the match is basically no disqualifications, no count out. The only way you can win is via knockout or submission.
Yeah, I got you. And he actually defeated Travis Banks last Sunday. And then there was the main event. You got new Progress Tag Team Champions Scotty Davis, who won the NPS on the Saturday before Still Chasing. His partner, Jordan Devlin, both from Ireland, of course, taking on the Grizzled Young Veterans in a bit of a rematch from Still Chasing, where Devlin and Scotty Davis won the title. So tell us about this rematch. And Davis and Devlin managed to retain the championships over James Drake and Zach Gibson. What did you think of that main event?
It was quite a good main event. It was from where I was sitting, because I was sitting front row. When the end of the match happened, it was the finish of it looked quite a bit messy, but I haven't watched it back to see it. Devlin hits from I'm trying to think off the top of my head what now. From Gibson and Drake set up a Doomsday device where Drake's coming off the top rope.
Yeah.
And when he hits it, Devlin reverses it into a Spanish fly. I'm not too sure if it was hit perfectly. I've not seen it back to really judge it, really.
It sounds like quite an inventive reversal and quite a decent way to regain the championships. And I'm waiting for it to drop on demand. I don't think it has just yet, but I'm looking forward
last night.
Right, okay.
So it is up available.
So that's another couple of hours that I need to find in my busy week of wrestling to squeeze that in, but I definitely will. I do love a bit of Progress. But thank you for your recap of last Sunday's show. And they've got another show next weekend which you're going to, is that right?
Yes, they have got another monthly show they normally have in Camden.
Right.
It's got another weird now. I can't remember off the top of my head. It's something to do with sex robots. I can't remember. I think it's sex robot. I think it's entitled "Sex Robots Will End Up Killing You." I think it is. It's another weird one.
You can tell that's all these kind of like title subheadings are kind of clearly from the very imaginative mind of Jim Smallman, no doubt. But we may not have Jim to kind of counter these imaginative titles from the new year, from 2020 anyway. But thank you for your recap of last Sunday's chapter 96 from Manchester. Let's talk a little bit about NXT UK. So this used to air every Wednesday night on the WWE Network. Over the last couple of weeks, it's been airing on Thursday night, so that essentially it wasn't throwing out too much content on the WWE Network on a Wednesday, of course, because you've obviously got NXT running live on the USA Network on Wednesday. So they obviously don't want to have too much content for their fans to choose, and obviously you've got AEW on a Wednesday, so they've chosen to move it to a Thursday, if any of that made any sense. But that's fine by me, and it's still an entertaining show. And I think one of the things I really enjoy about NXT UK over the other two that we're going to talk about is it's still an hour long, and I think that really, really helps because it's quite manageable. You can put an hour aside towards the end of the week or on a Thursday to watch NXT UK. And like I say, it's an enjoyable hour of wrestling. And this week was a really good show. The first match was Ilya Dragunov. So we spoke a little bit about Dragunov earlier on from chapter 96, but he was facing Saxton Huxley. So this was quite a competitive match with Alexander Wolf of Imperium watching at ringside, but Dragunov did put an end to this match with his Torpedo Moscow, his kind of favoured finishing move, and managed to pick up another win. However, with Wolf waiting in the wings at ringside, or kind of at the end of the ramp, where you could say we get Fabian Eichner and Marcel Bartel, fellow members of Imperium, come out supposedly for their up-and-coming match, which is going to be the match number 2 on this week's show, but with an air of intimidation towards Dragunov. Appears to be either, he's either being scouted by Imperium or possibly looking to set up some sort of rivalry with Dragunov. But what did you think of the match, and what did you think of kind of the presence of Alexander Wolf being at ringside, and then kind of Fabian Eichner and Marcel Bartel coming out after his win? A bit of an interesting kind of angle after the match itself. But tell me your thoughts anyway.
I thought the match was quite a decent match. It's not one of Ilya's best. I think since he had the match with Cesaro, I think it's going to be hard for him to try to top that match currently next to UK. But I thought it was a decent match overall. The whole thing with Wolf coming out, I think obviously they set up this thing 2 weeks ago, I think it was, or even last week, where he said he wanted to be either was looking out for him and was going to take his place in the match. And he was like, it's hard to say if it's like when you heard the music come at Imperium's music hit, you thought, oh, what's going on here? Is this Walser coming out to confront Dragunov? Like, actually, taking that seal of approval of the site, yes, you can come with us. But it's a good bit of like storytelling, obviously, like to see how long this will play out for.
Yeah, I think this is going to kind of play out over the next few weeks. And I kind of got it in the back of my mind that I think that Dragunov will end up feuding with Imperium, to be honest with you. I think that Dragunov's immediate future is possibly as a babyface. And I think that there's a possibility he might join Imperium. It'd be fun if he did for a little while, and then maybe kind of I don't know, tried to feud from within and break out of the ranks, much in the same way that Daniel Bryan did when he was part of the Wyatt family, and then he kind of broke out from that faction and became a top babyface. But it'll be interesting to see how this one develops. And it's kind of got me interested in Ilya Dragunov a little bit more, whereas he hasn't really been involved in many interesting storylines, and this has been a good bit of character development for him as well. So I'm interested to see where this one leads, and looking forward to next week's episode. The next match was Marcel Bartel and Fabian Eichner Imperium versus The Hunt, Primate, and a Wild Boar, of course. And this was another competitive match, much like the first one, with The Hunt pulling off a scrappy and a spirited effort against these two members of Imperium. However, the well-oiled team and teamwork from Fabian Eichner and Marcel Bartel was almost too much to contend with, as Eichner and Bartel finished the match with their powerbomb flying European uppercut combo for the win on Primate, getting the pinfall loss there, unfortunately. And that was an impressive show. And I think whenever you've got Imperium in the ring, when you've got these two in the ring, you always get some really good tag team action, some really good teamwork, really good combos, and kind of like double team action. And although it's quite a competitive match, with The Hunt putting up a good fight for most of the match, the dominance of Imperium certainly showed towards the end there. But what were your thoughts on this one here, Imperium versus The Hunt, then, Ashley?
Also, again, I concur. It was a very good match. It's weird enough that the last time I was on, we had the exact same match as well.
Interesting, yeah.
So it's obviously to try to see how the matches differ as well. I felt this was more an improvement than the last match. It seems like it was an evenly fought between the two, and overall, I think it was a good way. The Hunt looked strong in the match, and obviously, towards the end, they had their finish. Well, not kicked out of, but it interrupted. It still looked and kept them strong, where they can they came so close to getting the upset victory, but Imperium showed their supremacy and got the win in the end.
Definitely, but I do enjoy watching Bartel and Icon. They've been quite a regular. They have a regular presence on NXT as well. We'll be talking a bit more about them on NXT when we talk about that very, very shortly. But that was another fun match. The next match was Nina Samuels versus Xia Brookside. So it seems a little while since we last saw Brookside on NXT UK. Maybe it's not as long as I thought, but it seems like a little while since we've last seen her. But here, I mean, how long do you think it's been since we've seen Xia Brookside on NXT? She had that rival with Ginny and Jazzy Gabba, of course, but that seems a little while ago now. So maybe it's been a few weeks at the very least. But I mean, in this match, she was up against Nina Samuels. We saw a pretty good match between these two, with Samuels dominating with her power and her aggression, with Xia Brookside telling the kind of plucky babyface story. This was a really fun match, and probably my favourite match up to this point out of the matches we've seen on NXT UK, with Xia getting the pinfall after reversing a pinning attempt from Nina Samuels into a pinning combination of her own for the 1-2-3. And as much as I was impressed with Xia Brookside's performance here, I couldn't be any more impressed with Nina Samuels. I think that she's getting better every time she comes into the ring. I think she's really developed her character. I think she's getting better in the ring, and I think that although she lost in this match, she performed really, really well. And I'm kind of becoming quite a big fan of Nina Samuels. But I know Nina Samuels has been on quite a few Progress shows, or certainly one or two over the last few months. But what were your thoughts on this one then, Ash?
It was a nice, good match. It's just like, also the storytelling they've told, and obviously from commentary as well from Nigel McGuinness, playing out Brookside's strategy throughout the match is quite technical and old school British work that she'd been implying, really.
Yeah.
It's like how she was quickly transitioning from quick roll-ups and also into quick submission work as well.
Yeah, because they said that she'd been doing a bit of homework and kind of swatting up on some old British wrestling on VHS tapes, and so she's obviously kind of trying to be, adaptable in the rest. Yeah. But it was a good match. And what's your thoughts on Nina Samuels then, Ashleigh?
Yeah, she's been really impressive recently on NXT UK. She's definitely got her character nailed down, and she had two matches at not the last Camden show that I had. The best match she had was the main event between her and then champion at the time, Jordan Grace, which was at the time the best female match I've seen at Progress of the Year until the following month.
Yeah.
So it was literally, she has definitely got her character down to a fine art and knows how to portray that character.
Yeah, I think she's probably one of the more improved wrestlers on the NXT UK roster, I have to say, certainly this year anyway. Then we get a video package promoting NXT UK newcomer A-Kid, who will be joining NXT UK soon. I'm probably more familiar with him as part of the kind of fairly famous and up-and-coming tag team White Wolf alongside Carlos Romo. But here he's coming into NXT UK as a singles wrestler. Now, we have seen him in kind of a bit of an enhancement match, you could say, a bit of a squash match a few months ago, just after originally signing with NXT UK on an earlier episode. But they're doing a bit of a video package, getting a bit of hype going for A-Kid. It looks like he's going to be making his NXT UK debut soon, or official debut soon. I'm guessing you've seen him in the ring a few times at various indie shows. What's your experience of A-Kid then, Ashleigh?
I've seen him a couple of times. The first time I saw him was in singles action, I think it was Frontline last year in November. And then again when he was teaming with Carlos Romo against Jimmy Havoc and Mark Askins at Progress in Birmingham. I think it's the same show he was at.
Yeah.
That's it.
That was a good match. That was a really good match. That was. I mean, he looks quite athletic. He's a bit of a high flyer. He's quite a small wrestler, though. I know that when he was kind of, standing side by side with, say, Jimmy Havoc, who's not the tallest of wrestlers, you could definitely see a height difference there. So it'll be interesting to see how they use him. Yeah, like I say, he's definitely a popular wrestler around the UK and European indie scenes. I know he's from Madrid in Spain, but be interesting to see what happens then. I'm sure he'll be getting his debut on NXT UK TV fairly soon. Then we get a promo from Jordan Devlin, which soon turns into a bit of a face-off between him and Big Dave Mastiff, with Devlin trying his luck with a bit of physicality, only to have Mastiff destroy Devlin in the ring, clearly setting up a future match or a feud between these two. But one thing that stood out between these two was when they was on the microphone, and how much better Jordan Devlin is on the mic as compared to Dave Mastiff. But I thought this was a bit of fun exchange and a bit of a kind of a fresh matchup and a fresh pairing, having these two. You know, we seem to have Big Dave Mastiff up against other big guys like Joe Coffey and Eddie Dennis and kind of the bigger, brawlier type wrestlers, you could say. So this time he's up against more of a technical wrestler, more of a kind of an athletic wrestler in Jordan Devlin. And I think, Jordan Devlin had him kind of nailed down as far as the microphone work was concerned. But when it came to the physicality, Dave Mastiff wasn't taking any prisoners. But this was a bit of a fun segment. What were your thoughts from this bit?
I really enjoyed it as well. It shows how far Jordan Devlin has come since he's originally debuted with the company, of how he's a good person who can portray between face and heel with different companies he's been with over the years. But he's definitely got it down to a T how he is as a heel. There's one thing otherwise though, it's like I just don't know how they've just dropped the whole Devlin Tyler Bate feud after being the Cardiff tapings. It's like literally that's just like been swept under the carpet.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of stopped watching NXT a little bit a week or two after Cardiff, just because there was just so much content and maybe I just needed a bit of a break. Did Jordan Devlin and Tyler Bate actually have a match? I know that they had a bit of a microphone promo exchange, but did they have a match in the end?
I don't recall they'd had a match. They just had been back and forth on the microphones. That was it.
Yeah.
There's no combination to this being build up of the feud that's supposed to be happening.
And like you say, Jordan Devlin seems to have moved on to Dave Mastiff now. So maybe something's occurred there where they've had to put that feud between Devlin and Bate on hold for the meantime. But yeah, I mean, I was looking forward to that match as well. And like I say, I dropped off of NXT UK for a couple of weeks and but wasn't sure whether it had happened or not. But I'm sure, because they've done a little bit of a build-up and a bit of a backstory that will get them to in a ring again soon. And to be honest with you, that's quite a mouth-watering tie that you might want to kind of hold off for another takeover, for example, whenever the next NXT UK takeover might happen. But I've got a feeling they might do another one in January. So I think they might do one in January and every August.
I think Triple H came out, after the Cardiff takeover, on a press conference, he said there's definitely going to be more takeovers next year, and I think he's trying to get more, as in number wise, out as well. I think he'll try to sporadically do it between NXT and NXT UK, so every other month they'll try to do a takeover.
Yeah, I think that would work. But yes, so maybe they're saving it for a takeover. But I'm glad that they haven't had it already, because otherwise I would have missed it. So that's something to look forward to. And then we got our main event of NXT UK. So this was a really fun match. It went about 15 minutes. The South Wales subculture, the current NXT UK Tag Team Champions Mark Andrews and Flash Morgan Webster, of course, against Gallus. And Gallus comprised of Mark Coffey and Wolfgang. There is obviously a third member, Joe Coffey, who was not involved in this match, or not straight away anyway. And this is for the Tag Team Championship. So you may remember that fairy tale moment that happened in Cardiff at TakeOver on Saturday, the 31st of August. I was there, Ashleigh was there, when the South Wales subculture, Andrews and Morgan Webster, beat Gallus and beat the then champions GYV, the Grizzled Young Veterans, to win the NXT Tag Team Championships in that kind of historic moment in front of the Cardiff fans. And that was a night to be remembered, whether you're Welsh or whether you're English, it doesn't matter. It was just a fantastic moment for wrestling fans in general, and a great moment for those two. And they've defended their titles a little bit. I know that they had a rematch against GYV from the Cardiff tapings that would have been shown throughout September, but here going up against Gallus, of course. So Mark Coffey and Wolfgang dominated much of this match due to their size and their power. I have to say that when Flash Morgan was in, he was like a ball of energy when he got the hot tag. Fellow Gallus member Joe Coffey, I mentioned him briefly earlier on, he did come out to ringside to support his fellow Gallus members. Andrews gets a close near fall from their free toast at 3 a.m. assisted 450 splash. That's always good fun. Quite a good name as well. Andrews saves the 3 count for his partner after a moonsault from Wolfgang. All 4 members of the match then get involved. All things start to break down in the centre of the ring towards the end of the match. Andrews is able to hit a stun dog millionaire before Andrews and Morgan Webster strike with their assisted poison rana. Webster then gets a very close near fall from a top rope senton. Wolfgang then launches Andrews into the ring post on the outside, with Webster missing his 450 off the top rope, allowing Coffey and Wolfgang to combine with their Enziguri power slam combo for the win. And we have new NXT UK tag team champions, Ashleigh. So I thought it was a really good match to cap off an excellent episode of NXT UK. But I'm a little bit disappointed that Andrews and Flash Morgan have dropped the titles so soon into their reign. I mean, GYV, they had the titles for 8 or 9 months. Flash Morgan Webster, they've had it for a month and a half. If that, and a little bit disappointed. I mean, maybe there's going to be a storyline where they get a rematch and possibly retain the title somewhere down the line. I don't think this is the end of them as NXT Tag Team Champions, but I would have expected them to have held the titles for a little bit longer. Nonetheless, it was a really good match. I'm pleased that Gallus has kind of got their opportunity and they're finally holding some silverware or some championships in NXT. But what were your thoughts on this one, and what were your thoughts on the outcome?
Overall, I enjoyed this match very well. This is my favourite match of the episode. There was quite some unique offense between the two. The inventiveness of the stand up me there, because that was just something unique I've never seen before. Just Wolfgang was going for what was he doing now? A slingshot into Mark Coffey to hit a big move. He just instantly. How Mark Andrews turned himself to do that move, I do not know. To hit the stand up was just quick timing to do that. I was very impressed with that.
Yeah.
And one thing I want to point out is which I'll bring out later on, I was pleased that Joe Coffey didn't get involved in the match somehow. How he kept himself away from ringside and didn't get involved to try get a cheat to win victory for his team.
Well, I kind of knew the result having read spoilers, and I was half expecting with Joe Coffey being there for him to get involved and to be a factor in the outcome. And like you said, I'm pleased that it didn't have a screwy finish like that, but that it did end in kind of like a clean finish. But yeah, carry on.
Yeah, no. How I could see is I'm not too sure if it was just if Flash Morgan Webster at Manjus were just don't want to say they were transitional champions. I think that it might have been a way of getting the belts off Crystal Young Veterans onto Gallus for an easier way for neither of them to take, for GYV not to take the pinfall loss to Gallus. I'm not too sure, but yeah. I can see them getting a rematch because I've not seen spoilers for upcoming tapings, but I can see them definitely having a rematch further down the line. But I'm trying to think who else will challenge them afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, the tag team ranks in NXT UK are a little bit thin on the ground. I mean, you've obviously got GYV, Gallus, Flash Morgan and Andrews.
Imperium.
The Hunt, Imperium. So, yeah, I mean, there is 5 or 6 teams there that could potentially, be in contention. At the moment, it seems to be rotating, between the same 2 or 3 teams, but that's fine. It's all part of the storyline. I would like to see Imperium possibly have a shot soon. I don't think they've had a proper go at the NXT tag team titles. Yeah. But I mean, what's your thoughts on the NXT UK tag team scene, and who do you think might be the next, the next champions?
I can see potentially Imperium picking up the straps. I can see definitely Fabian Eichler and Marcel Bartel picking up the straps.
So in a similar way to Undisputed Era, with Imperium having all the gold, maybe.
Similarly, you can't do that thing, but they're slowly going on kind of under the radar. There's been an undefeated team for I think this year throughout. I think so far they're slowly building momentum. Obviously, they've not challenged for the titles yet as far.
Yeah, and so it'll be interesting to see what happens. I know one team that you saw at Progress last week, Pretty Deadly. Now that they've been on NXT UK a few times, and they got a good look. They're quite young and athletic, and it'd be nice to see them get a bit of a push. I'm not saying they're championship material yet, but I'd like to see them become a bit more of a permanent member of or more regular fixture within the NXT UK tag ranks. But I mean, having seen them for the first time last week in the flesh, do you think that they could have a future on NXT
UK? Pretty Desert. Yeah, I can see them. They're very good hands at the moment. They're kind of sit like. Not, I wouldn't say what their hearts retains. They're very good, decent wrestlers. I've seen them quite a fair few times over the past couple of years. But at the moment, I just can't. I don't know how they're playing it. Well, they know how to play their characters. I just don't see who they're going to get their first win against at the moment. If they're going to do it, they could get, if it's done right, they could get a surprise victory over someone. So I would like to see them get a surprise victory over, like, say, a former tag team champions. We say GYV, like, they could be like all cocky in this, like, who are these opponents you've handpicked for us? They get a cheeky, like, 1-2-3 kid kind of thing, get an upset victory out of nowhere.
Yeah, and that's how you make your new stars. That's exactly how you make your new stars. And funny that you mentioned the 1-2-3 kid, because that was, of course, his launching pad when he had that surprise win over Razor Ramon in 1993, I think it was.
Yeah,
so let's skip on to. I mean, I think we'll both agree it was a really good episode of NXT UK.
Yes,
it was a good hour. Yeah,
solid
it flew by. Nothing dragged, and lots of good actions, some good matches, and none of the matches were quick either. You know, they all had a decent amount of time in the ring to tell a story. And they certainly did that. But I thought it was a cracking episode. And really, the reason why I kind of want to continue talking about NXT UK on the podcast every week is because I think not enough people are watching it. Not enough people are, especially any of my American listeners. I don't think they've really got behind or fully understand or appreciate NXT UK. So I'm telling you, whatever part of the world you're listening to this podcast, please go out and check NXT UK. Please go out and check this week's episode because it is absolutely fantastic. Some really good matches, some really good up and coming talent, some really good stories being told in the ring. And so like I say, you get a title change at the end of this week's episode and a really, really good show. So speaking of good shows, let's talk in detail about this week's NXT. So of course you've got the Wednesday night wars now. NXT, it's a ratings war. It's a battle of wrestling shows and who can get the most amount of interest between NXT and AEW, and this week's show was pretty good. So this week's show begins with something we thought we might not see, at least not for a long time anyway. And as Mauro Ranallo said on commentary, Tommaso Ciampa had returned. He was expected to be out for at least 1 year, but he makes his return after only 7 months. And the former NXT champion, who never lost the championship, by the way, is back. And he's back in action on this week's NXT. So he goes up against a really bright prospect, Angel Garza, who has already kind of made a name for himself with the Full Sail audience. I think that the ladies there especially like it when he rips off his tights to reveal his trunks underneath. But there's loud chants of Tommaso's going to kill you before this match aimed at Angel Garza, of course. This match was frantic from the off, with Garza eventually able to turn around Tommaso's offense with a dive through the ropes and a missile drop kick to the face of Ciampa before ripping off his tights. You see, probably most revered move out of all of his moveset is ripping off his tights to reveal his trunks underneath. Ciampa comes back with a running knee to the face of Garza in the corner. Then, after laying the smackdown on Garza's discarded tights and throws them into the audience, he's able to put Garza away with his Willow's Bell. It's called the Willow's Bell draping DDT. I think it's named after his young daughter, of course, to get the pinfall victory. With Ciampa sending out a clear message to the fans that he wants his championship belt back. He wants his Goldie back. So after the match, we get current NXT champion Adam Cole and the rest of the Undisputed Era, who surround the ring. Kyle O'Reilly then approaches the commentary booth, where he is seen kind of throwing a USB drive, a USB stick towards the desk, leaving us to wonder what secrets might be on the drive. So actually a really hot way to start this week's NXT. Great to see Tommaso Ciampa back in the ring after only being out for 7 months. But tell us your thoughts on the match and on your thoughts on kind of what happened afterwards as well.
I thought it was a decent match between the two. It's literally, I think it was like a list. I think it was just to start testing the water things with Ciampa at the moment. Obviously, he's just been cleared up. Was it a couple of weeks ago? Literally to see how far he can, like, how much he can do at the moment. Obviously, not trying to like burn him. Well, to aggravate, not to re-aggravate the injury as much.
So they're not going to start putting him in. Not going to start putting him in 30-minute Iron Man matches or anything like that, are they?
I think this is like a good tester of him to see how much he can adapt to, like, to see if he can try to change his ring style, because obviously he's got a new finisher now, which obviously it's not going to be. Well, it might do slight damage to the neck, not as much impact, I think.
Yeah.
But overall, I think it was a solid match between the two. It's like both men got decent offense in the match. And the whole UE thing at the end, you'd thought, oh, it's going to be a confrontation between, it's going to be a 4-1 beatdown Ciampa.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
But obviously, it's just literally that it ends up with Kyle O'Reilly throwing a USB stick to the commentary team, and they hand it off to get it been viewed at.
Yeah. So, I mean, good way to open the show. But after the break, we get a look at what was contained on the USB drive with footage of all 4 members of Undisputed Era surrounding a supposedly unconscious Velveteen Dream on a pile of boxes in what looks like a vicious beatdown of Velveteen Dream, with Adam Cole telling Tommaso Ciampa that if he continues to get in his way, then this is what will happen to him. So a bit of a threat there from Adam Cole. And no doubt we'll see a championship match between those two fairly soon. That'll be a match I'm definitely looking forward to. So this was a fine return for Tommaso with a victory for the former NXT champion. And it kind of staggers me how kind of quick he recovered after neck surgery after only 7 months. But I was able to watch the Tommaso Ciampa documentary on the WWE Network earlier in the week, and it was quite a heartwarming and quite an emotional story, showing us the very real human side of Tommaso Ciampa, which is something we probably didn't get to see before his injury. We got to see his life before, during, and after his surgery. So there was a lot of footage of kind of pre-op and post-op, and even during the operation as well, which I had to look away. I'm a bit squeamish with footage of operations, but also it kind of showed that the love and the support that he had from his wife and his little child there, Willow. And after watching it, it's no wonder that Tommaso returned as a babyface as compared to the dastardly heel that he was prior to his surgery. So all good things there as far as Tommaso Ciampa is concerned. And definitely go and check out the Tommaso Ciampa documentary on the WWE Network if you haven't already. But on to match number 2, and it was Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch. I think they call themselves the Britam Connection or something like that, versus Imperium. So we've just commentated on Fabian Eichner and Marcel Barthel match, and this is their second match that's going to be highlighted on this podcast, this time on NXT. So going into this match, you know what you're going to get. You're going to get a hard-hitting match, and a hard-hitting match is definitely what we got. So Burch goes on the offense with a stiff headbutt, a step-up enziguri, and a missile dropkick to Barthel. However, Imperium strike back with a double basement dropkick to the face of Danny Burch. That seems to be one of their signature moves nowadays. Oney Lorcan gets the hot tag and flies over the top rope, not once but twice, to take out his opponents. This match gets fast and furious pretty quick, with Fabian Eichner nailing a brainbuster on Oney Lorcan, followed by a double springboard moonsault that got the fans on their feet for a very close to near fall. So I love it when Eichner, he's quite a muscular guy. He's got power, but he's got a lot of agility and a lot of athleticism. And when he bounces from one rope to another, and that double springboard moonsault is really, really impressive. Fabian Eichner and Marcel Barthel are like a well-oiled team, as I mentioned earlier, as they combine well with a spine buster and a penalty kick combo, followed by a power bomb and a flying forearm uppercut combo, with Barthel hooking the leg and getting the pinfall victory over Oney Lorcan. So that was a fast and furious match, with Burch and Lorcan putting up a good fight, as they always do. However, the teamwork of Barthel and Eichner were just too much at the end of the day. That was a pretty dominant win and a great performance from the Imperium duo, with the closing image of Eichner, Barthel and Alexander Wolf standing tall in the ring as they do. So, a good match, quite a hard-hitting match. You know what you're going to get when you've got Danny Burch and Oney Lorcan in there. Put them in the ring with Fabian Eichner and Marcel Barthel. It's always a good recipe for a fantastic match, and it was a really good match here. So what were your thoughts on this one, Ash?
As you said, it's another brilliant match between these two teams. There's enough to show there's been diversity between Imperium on both brands. It's literally the teamwork between both the teams is quite impressive. They're in spot with Fabian Aichner, obviously, he was on the in the 205 Classic, Cruiserweight Classic back in like 2015, was it? 16?
It's 2016, yeah.
Yeah, 2016. You see how he cut the weight to be a cruiserweight, and now he's put on mass to be. He's still quite agile for a big man. And when he done that double spring moonsault, I was literally, as you said, it's literally bloody hell.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. You don't see that from many of the cruiserweights, let alone somebody who's as kind of muscular as Fabian Aichner. But he's, I think he's got it all. He's pretty much the total package, to be honest with you. I think the team as a whole are pretty much the total package. But carry on. I rudely interrupted you there. Carry on.
No problem there. There's another person we'll speak. A couple other people who are quite similar stature, but quite a bigger size, which we should talk about, is very athletic as well.
Yes.
But it's quite not dominant performance, but evenly fought match, and at the end of it, Imperium pick up the win. And it's an evenly fought contest and a hard fought win.
Yeah, good point. But like I say, I think that Aichner and Bartel, it'd be interesting to see what happens. We spoke of them being possibly NXT UK Tag Team Champions. They could be in contention for the NXT Tag Team titles as well. Who knows? But it looks like a very, very bright future for that tag team anyway. We then get an interview or a video package with Johnny Gargano, who talks about his history with Tommaso Ciampa. Johnny says that they've had their ups and their downs. Johnny said that he won't know how he feels about Tommaso Ciampa until he sees him face to face. So quite interesting there. I mean, they had a long rivalry, a long feud, which lasted. I mean, it seemed to me like it lasted probably a couple of years on NXT TV. Now, I think Johnny said in the video package that it was a 3 or 4 year long feud. So obviously he's counting the time when they were in the Cruiserweight Classic and, DIY and then the breakdown of the team. So they've obviously been on the same page and been in the same story, you could say, for 3 or 4 years. And but their feud, their red hot feud that everybody was talking about, definitely lasted a couple of years. But it's interesting now that Tommaso's returned as a babyface. Johnny Gargano's always been a babyface. I think the way the video package was going, it was kind of like hyping up another match between these two, or a match between these two. Obviously, they didn't get their blow-off match in New York over WrestleMania weekend for TakeOver New York when Tommaso was the champion. When Tommaso was the champion and had the belt taken off of him just weeks before. So it'll be interesting to see the dynamics when these two do see each other face to face, and I'm sure they'll have a match to kind of satisfy the fans and satisfy themselves to have that blow-off match. But at the moment, the gold isn't involved. None of them are champions. So it'd be interesting to see what sort of dynamic they have. And because both of them are babyfaces, who knows? They could reform as DIY. That was always a very popular tag team and a good way to kind of get them on the screen together without them necessarily fighting one another. But what were your thoughts on this video package, and kind of what's your kind of thoughts, thinking a little bit deeper into it about what may happen between Johnny Gargano and Tommaso when you look a bit further into the future?
Overall, I think it's quite a good insight. Obviously, I'd like to recap viewers who are not casually on the eyes of NXT, obviously because of the moves at the USA Network. So obviously it's trying to establish this feud that's happened. Obviously, the return of Ciampa, it's turning face.
Yeah.
After his injury, it's obviously trying to give a bit of a backstory to the new viewers who have come in to watch the product if they're not familiar with the product. I could possibly see him having not a blow-off feud match, sort of takeover, but I could possibly see them try and build it up for NXT TV.
Yeah.
Possibly somehow it gets interfered and they might form DIY again, probably go after Undisputed Era. Yeah, it'd be interesting. I think that there's a lot of ways it could go, a lot of possibilities. I like the idea of what you've just said, of them kind of joining forces as a babyface combo to go after the heel groups within the group, possibly Undisputed Era or some other combination. But it looks like Tommaso Ciampa has got one eye set on Adam Cole's championship, and obviously he never lost the NXT championship. He kind of had the title taken away from him, and he wants his Goldie back. So it'll be interesting to see. There's lots of kind of different things here. There's lots of different threads to the storyline. It's quite interesting, to be honest with you. So I am interested to see where it goes next. But on to our next match.
And it featured another kind of superstar within the NXT ranks, Io Shirai versus Caden Carter. So I know Caden was part of the 2018 Mae Young Classic under a different name. Now, I can't remember who she was.
Lucy Lane.
Yeah, so yeah, I think you're right. Lacey Lane, yeah,
because I think there was signs in the audience to say Lacey Lane's fans in the crowd.
That was it. Yes, because I remember in that Mae Young Classic you had Lacey Evans and you had Lacey Lane. So yes, but she's back here under a different name. I think she's been carrying the new name for a little while now. Caden Carter. Caden here put in quite a spirited effort against Io Shirai. However, after a devastating German suplex from Io and her patented moonsault, there was only ever going to be one winner, and that was the Empress of the Sky, of course, Io Shirai. So after the match, Io got on the mic telling us that it's not Rhea Ripley and it's not Bianca Belair. She tells Shayna that it is her, signalling that she wants to be the next contender to Shayna Baszler's championship, of course. Then we get an appearance from Rhea Ripley, who comes out to the ring to snatch the mic away from Io, telling Io that if she ever spits her name out of her mouth again, then she has no problem shutting her up too. So some strong words there from Rhea Ripley, and that's a match that I wouldn't mind seeing, to be honest with you. Io Shirai versus Rhea Ripley. Io then shows no fear as she appears to challenge Rhea Ripley to a match in her native tongue, Japanese, of course, and that would be a match I'd love to see. And I've got a feeling that we're going to see that on an up-and-coming episode of NXT pretty soon. What were your thoughts on this quite short match and quite a dominant win here from Io Shirai, and the exchange between Io and Rhea Ripley on the microphone afterwards? Tell us your thoughts, Ash.
Overall, obviously, it was probably it was an easy win for Shirai in the end.
Yeah,
but it's just character driven, so I build up her momentum to obviously challenge for the women's title, which we'll get on to a bit later. Because I think they've got, scheduled for next week, I think it's Rhea Ripley versus Bianca Belair, I think.
Yeah, so being billed as a number one contenders match, I think. I'm not sure.
I'm not too sure if it is a number one contenders match. It might be, but I think they could possibly have a triple threat between Io Shirai, Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair to see who gets the title shot, possibly, further down the line.
Yeah, okay. But I'd say quite a good performance. It's always good to see Io Shirai. I love her new darker heelish gimmick. I think that it's so much better than what she was trying to portray before. I think she played a heel quite a lot in Stardom in Japan during a Japanese run, and it's a shame that Kairi Sane didn't stick around in NXT, because I would have loved to have seen Kairi versus Io. Obviously best friends. One as a babyface, one as a heel, but that may happen somewhere down the line, who knows. Then we get a Kathy Kelly backstage interviewing William Regal, who tells us that the Velveteen Dream will be unable to challenge Roderick Strong for the North American Championship next week because of his brutal beatdown that he suffered at the hands of UE earlier in the show. Regal tells us that Roderick Strong will still be defending his North American Championship next week, but it will be up against the winner of either Keith Lee and Dominik Dijakovic, who will be fighting each other later on in the episode. So a nice bit of promo work there from William Regal, setting up a match for next week, and I can't imagine that news went down too well with Roderick Strong or the rest of the members of Undisputed Era. And then we get the aforementioned match, Keith Lee versus Dominik Dijakovic. So this is now a number one contenders match for the North American Championship, so the stakes have been raised. I mean, we've seen these two, they've had 3 blockbuster matches previously, but now the stakes are a little bit higher in this match, with the winner getting a shot at the North American Championship next week. So in this match, some of the highlights: Keith Lee drops Dijakovic with a huge pounce. Dijakovic drops Lee with a choke bomb. Lee goes to the middle rope to deliver a frog splash to Dominik's left arm before nailing a gigantic sit-out powerbomb with Dijakovic, that's easy for me to say, rolling out of the ring to safety. Dijakovic gets a close near fall from a cyclone kick. Keith Lee gets a close near fall from a powerful vertical suplex, and it took him a while to power up the taller Dijakovic there, but he did eventually, without putting him down once. Keith Lee's a tremendously strong guy there. Then with Keith Lee perched upon the top turnbuckle, Dijakovic picks Lee up into an electric chair. However, Keith Lee still has the presence of mind to deliver an awesome Poison Rana for another 2 count, and that's something you don't see a big man of Keith Lee's size perform. You see it in the cruiserweights. You don't see it with Keith Lee at 340 pounds. And like I say, that was another holy shit moment for the fans, and definitely something to add to their resume of highlights or match highlights from their 4 matches they've had together. That move seemed to take the match to another level. Both men then took to the top turnbuckles again, where it appeared Lee was about to hit an avalanche powerbomb off the turnbuckle when Roderick Strong comes out from out of nowhere to nail both men with the North American Championship belt, causing a disqualification end to this match. So Roderick thinks he's outsmarted William Regal by causing a non-finish to this number 1 contenders match. However, Regal from up in the crow's nest somewhere on a box somewhere shouts down to the ring on a microphone and sends down some bad news for Roderick Strong, telling Strong that he will be defending his championship next week, and it will be in a triple threat match against Keith Lee and Dominik Dijakovic. So a bit of a turn of events there, and William Regal getting another one up on Roderick Strong. So we just saw another great match between these two. I don't think Dominik Dijakovic and Keith Lee can have a bad match, can they, Ashleigh? I mean, this was a fantastic match. It just seemed to get better and better. And this is match number 4. And next week, it will be match number 5, but it will be in a 3-way match with a championship on the line. But give us your thoughts on this one here, buddy.
I've enjoyed this feud so much.
Yeah.
After the past couple, their matches have gotten better and better over the past week. Apart from the down finish, this was easily my match of the night for this show. It's like it just blew me away. There'd been Poison Rider from Leeds. Just literally, I was just left gobsmacked after that. I was like, bloody hell. You're going because each match they've done a spot to make the match memorable. The second match Lee does the bin Spanish fly from the top rope, which you don't think he would do. Then Dijakovic hits a destroyer from the top rope in the next match after that, and then they do the Poison Rider. You think, bloody hell, what have these two still got to give? Yeah, and potentially try to do it again next week is going to be very, very interesting.
Yeah, do you think that at the end of this year we'll be looking back on this feud between Keith Lee and Dominik Dijakovic as possibly feud of the year? What do you think?
I could possibly see it being a contender for it as there's not really any. The only other feud I could think could possibly top it really so far is Cole Gargano.
Yeah,
but
true.
I think that's the only other feud I can think of that could possibly top it.
Yeah, but I mean the only thing. Go on.
The matches they've been having, because obviously it was it 7 or 8 weeks since they had their first match to their second match, obviously they had a long build up because due to both having injuries.
Yeah.
And obviously it's build up anticipation for the fans to see what they can do with their next match.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how the dynamics of the matches or the chemistry between these two change, adding Roderick Strong into the mix. And Roderick Strong, I mean, he's renowned for his variety of backbreakers. Makes you wonder how many backbreakers he's going to be able to perform on Keith Lee or maybe Dijakovic next week. Probably not as many, but he is quite strong. He's kind of quite a smaller but a well-built package, Roderick Strong. I reckon he's stronger than he looks. But it'll be, I think some of the holy shit moments next week might be when he kind of picks up Keith Lee and kind of performs some of the moves that he would tend to do on a smaller wrestler, and the same for Dijakovic. So I think next week, I mean, if that doesn't go on last, if that's not the main event, I mean, that's a match that can blow the socks off of anybody, whether you're watching it live or kind of on your TV screens. And I think that could be the match that could possibly pull back the ratings for NXT. But I'm really looking forward to that one.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to that match as well. It's just Roddy trying to outsmart being Regal, but ends up shooting himself in the foot.
Definitely.
I'm not having any challenges. No, you get 2 of them.
Yeah, Typical Undisputed Era. But moving on to our next match, Matt Riddle versus Bronson Reed. So we haven't seen a lot of Bronson Reed since the NXT Breakout Tournament a few months ago, where he made a bit of a name for himself. But here he's on primetime TV on the USA Network against the original bro, the King of Bros, whatever you want to call him, Matt Riddle. So Riddle goes from 0 to 100 miles an hour as the bell rings to start this match. However, Reed does block a Broton with a pair of raised knees and performs a senton of his own. Riddle does manage to stun the audience with a tremendous show of power, starting with a massive bro to sleep, so his version of the GTS, of course, then an awesome powerbomb. So that match was a lot of fun, with Riddle demonstrating his awesome strength and a brilliant array of moves. But this match also gave us a look at Bronson Reed, who continues to impress, and I'm predicting big things for Bronson Reed, both literally and figuratively. But give us your thoughts on this Matt Riddle versus Bronson Reed match, and your thoughts on the individuals. Give us your overall thoughts on these two then, buddy.
Early doors in the match, both men show early dominance, having blows to blows, make sure who make out who was the bigger man in the end. But it showed both men showed their strengths throughout the match. Riddle showed some great power moves in there to get to overcome the big man of Bronson Reed, and Bronson Reed was had a great comeback in the match as well. But it was a very hard fought win for Riddle in the end, but gained Bronson Reed's respect at the end of the match by giving him a fist bump at the end.
Yeah, that was a pretty cool ending, a bit of a show of respect there between two guys. Matt Riddle obviously lost his championship opportunity when he had an NXT title match against Adam Cole a couple of weeks ago. That was a really good match. I say really good match. It was probably one of the best matches ever shown on NXT TV, and it opened the show that week. I think that was the first week they went head-to-head with Dynamite, of course. Yeah, and that was a cracking match. And it looks like they're trying to rebuild Matt Riddle, but with Tommaso Ciampa on the scene and Finn Balor on the scene, both kind of with one eye on Adam Cole's championship. I don't think Matt Riddle is going to be in contention for the gold anytime soon, unless he kind of throws his hat into the ring for the North American Championship somewhere down the line. That doesn't appear to be on the cards immediately, though. But good to see Matt Riddle. Good to see him kind of pull out a good selection of moves and demonstrating a lot of power as well. I mean, he's quite a muscular guy. He's a well-built guy, but he definitely showed that he's got the power here as well. But moving on to the next match. And this match was a lot of fun as well, albeit very, very short. Tainara, formerly Tainara Conte, of course, going up against Tegan Nox. So this is Tegan's first match on NXT since returning from a year-long injury, being out with a torn ACL, of course, following last year's Mae Young Classic. We have, however, seen Tegan more recently on NXT UK, where she recently lost out to the women's champion Kaylee Ray a couple of weeks ago for the NXT UK Women's Championship. After some fairly good offense from Tainara did get her licks in. Tegan Nox made her come back with a clothesline, a choke slam, a running elbow, and a senton in the corner, and a top rope flying crossbody, all before finishing her opponent off with the shiniest of all wizards for the 1-2-3. So a good match here for Tegan. She definitely pulled out all the stops to beat her opponent in the end. In the end, it looked like a fairly easy victory for Tegan. So great to see her back. Great to see her back on NXT as well, which is where I think she would have been a massive superstar had she not got injured about this time last year. So, as I said, Tegan Nox looked really, really good. I was quite impressed that she used the choke slam. You don't see many women on the WWE or NXT roster use the choke slam, but obviously taking a leaf out of one of her favourite wrestlers, Kane's book. So I was quite impressed with the choke slam there. And after the match, Tegan is congratulated by Kathy Kelly at ringside and a Team Kick stablemate Dakota Kai when we hear the music of current NXT Women's Champion Shayna Baszler. So Shayna comes down to the ring with other two stablemates. and has a mic in hand to tell Tegan that that Tegan's running out of limbs to rehab. So a nice line there from Shayna Baszler, and that Tegan hasn't earned a title shot and needs to speak to her again when she's done something worth talking about. So that was one hell of a promo from Shayna Baszler, quite a funny promo as well, managing to put Tegan in her place. However, I'm pretty sure that we will be seeing Tegan as some kind of championship or number one contenders match fairly soon. She certainly seems to be making a bit of a name for herself stateside now. So give us your thoughts on this one and kind of the little promo exchange. Well, it wasn't really a promo exchange. I think Shayna Baszler kind of beat her to the floor with her 2 lines there that she gave to Tegan Nox. But give us your thoughts on this one, buddy.
It was an overall good match between the two. I think it was Tegan Nox's official debut for NXT, I think, on TV, at least, because I don't recall her being on NXT TV before.
Yeah, I think you're right in saying that. Yeah, correct.
Because I think she was signed to WWE just before the first Mae Young Classic, and obviously that's when she suffered her first knee injury. Yeah. And obviously she then debuted in the second Mae Young Classic after she healed up from her first injury, and then obviously, unfortunately, suffered a second injury to the opposite knee, and obviously ruled out for near enough a full calendar year until she rehabbed and got back onto the circuit.
Yeah,
I think it was in the past couple months or so.
That's right. Yeah, she's done some live events for NXT around Florida, and then of course we saw her in the crowd at Takeover Cardiff, and she wrestled during the tapings the following night. Like I say, she went up against Kaylee Ray a couple of weeks ago. But here, yeah, you're quite right. This is her first appearance on NXT from Full Sail anyway. So yeah, you're quite right.
Yeah, overall, I think it was a good way to show off Tegan's capability as well. There's obviously great use of the chokeslam as well. As he says, that's not a move that's been predominantly used by women as such. I can't think of any other one person using it really.
No.
Even past years gone by or currently, either on any brand or even on the independent scene off the top of my head.
Yeah, it's normally kind of like a big man move, isn't it? So to see somebody within the women's division, not that it should matter, of course, but it's not a move that you would associate with anybody in the women's roster. So if that's going to be part of her moveset, then fine, I'm all for it. I think it suited her and it was a good move.
Definitely, and the aftermath of the match as well was quite interesting as well. It's obviously setting up more contenders for Shayna's title as well, and her mic work is just improved over the past couple of years. So much that how the lies. Oh, you've got no. Oh, just go. You've got no more limbs to go rehab. Oh, you can just go rehab over there. Yeah. Come and speak to me when you've done something. So far in this episode, we've seen impressive outings from Tegan Nox and Io Shirai, as well as excellent promos from Rhea Ripley and Shayna Baszler, and a Bianca Belair video package as well. Not to mention Candice LeRae's excellent outing against Shayna Baszler a couple of weeks ago for the NXT Women's title. I'm loving the women's division right now in NXT. It just appears to go from strength to strength, and there's rumours that Toni Storm might be joining NXT fairly soon as well. So what's your thoughts on the current state of the women's division on NXT especially? I mean, they seem to be highlighting and promoting the women and the women's division on the live NXTs on the USA Network quite heavily. Certainly this week demonstrated that. But you say they've already had a couple of women's matches, some quite hot promos, and a video package with Bianca Belair. They're putting a lot of emphasis and a lot of focus on the women in NXT, and it seems to be paying off. They're definitely delivering. Yeah, they definitely are delivering. There's something I'll bring up in AEW about their women division as well. With NXT and NXT UK, they're allowing their stars to develop as much, and you're actually getting to see a variety of different people as well.
Yeah,
across both NXT and NXT UK, and you're given quite a lot of storyline development for each character as well.
Yeah, definitely they do. I think they've always been very good at developing stars, giving them time to develop and to grow a personality. I mean, that's something that although the main roster product, SmackDown or Raw, they have more hours of TV every single week to fill. You would think that they would be able to fill that by developing the characters, by doing vignettes, and by doing video packages like the NXT brands and the AEW brands are doing very successfully. But Raw and SmackDown haven't quite grasped the concept of doing that effectively to build the characters that they're bringing up. It's like, right, here's somebody we're bringing up from NXT to Raw or SmackDown, plonk them in a match, nobody knows anything about them, there's no background. Whereas before, when I was growing up a wrestling fan in the you could say late 80s or early 90s, they would do 4 or 5 weeks of video packages promoting Ted DiBiase, or promoting Mr. Perfect, or promoting a Razor Ramon, and you would know the ins and outs of these characters before they made their debut, and it just takes a bit of time, takes a bit of patience, takes a bit of imagination. They could do it then 30 years ago. Why can't they do it now? But times have changed, I know. But I think that would help to create more stars, because when you look at the stars of the modern era, a lot of the characters are quite bland. They haven't really got a great personality. When you compare kind of the Hall of Famers, from the 80s and from the 90s, you had big characters. They didn't need to be outlandish characters. They didn't need to be clowns or garbage men or anything like that. But you had kind of characters that could talk, that looked great. But a lot of the characters of the modern scene certainly seem very similar, and it's when you get to a character like the Velveteen Dream that it kind of takes you back to the 80s and the 90s of the kind of more flamboyant macho men, or the ravishing Rick Rude and that sort of ilk. But they need to do a bit more like that. Not too many outlandish characters, but like I say, maybe just doing the video packages, maybe doing the hype packages, and just a few weeks before their debut, just building up that character in a similar way to what they did recently with Damian Priest, I suppose. And we'll be talking a bit about him very soon. But that's a good example of something they've done right in NXT that they can't quite get right on the main roster just yet. But give us your thoughts overall on the women's division on NXT. It's very strong, and who can you see? And there's so many possible contenders to Shayna's title. We thought for so many times now that she was going to lose against Bianca Belair, or lose against Candice LeRae, or lose against whoever it might be, Nikki Cross or Io Shirai, and it's not happened. And she's retained, and she's retained, and she's retained. And we've been predicting for a long time that Shayna was going to be called up to either Raw or SmackDown, and that's not happened. She continues to hold on to the belt. So give us your thoughts on kind of the picture at the moment regarding the women's scene on NXT, and who do you think might take the belt off Shayna eventually?
It's a hard one to call, really. I think at the moment, it's a toss up between either Rhea Ripley or Io Shirai.
Right.
Personally, I could see possibly at the War Games takeover, possibly a multi-women's match, but as in like a fatal 4-way. So it's an easy way to get the belt off Shayna without her taking the pin or submission.
Yeah.
So obviously she loses it by still having kept strong, but obviously not taking the loss in the ring. Yeah. So I could see it being either a triple threat or a fatal 4-way possibly, but to say who her challenger is going to be, I'll say it's between either Io Shirai or Rhea Ripley, really. And they can possibly throw Tika Knox into there, but I think that could be a bit too soon for her. You could possibly even throw Candice LeRae into it, obviously to play off their storyline they've had earlier on as well. But obviously it's like quite difficult to say, really, at the moment.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's so many possible contenders, isn't there? So many names and so many people that you could say, might vie for Shayna's title in the future. But I like your kind of bit of fantasy book in there, possibly having a 3 or 4-way match at the next takeover. I think that could work. We shall see. I think the bottom line is that the women's division on NXT is absolutely stacked at the minute, and there's so many possibilities. And like I say, it's certainly keeping my interest. And it's good that they're using the women in a prominent featured role every single week on NXT, so good for them. The next match was between Boa and Killian Dane. Unfortunately for Boa, it wasn't much of a match. The match ended in pretty quick and dominant fashion, with Dane destroying Boa after a huge senton, 3 Vader bombs, followed by a submission hold that looked like a combination of a camel clutch and an abdominal stretch. And I'm fairly sure that the referee called an end to this match with Boa looking in a lot of pain and a lot of trouble from that moment, certainly from the moment that move was applied anyway. We then head into the main event of this week's NXT, featuring Pete Dunne and the Archer of Infamy, Damian Priest, in a match that's been building for a few weeks now after Priest attacks the Bruiserweight following a win for Dunne on a recent episode of NXT. However, the action started early for Dunne as he passed the recently victorious Killian Dane near the stage area, and as Dane approached the Bruiserweight, Dunne just simply wasted no time in snapping away at Killian Dane's fingers before continuing his very cool and calm walk to the ring. That's a match that I would definitely like to see more of. I think Killian Dane and Pete Dunne could be quite an entertaining feud. We'll probably see a lot more of those two in the future. But with this match, there was a bit of a scary moment when Pete Dunne appeared to, almost drop Damian Priest from the middle turnbuckle with a suplex of sorts, with Priest almost landed on his head. Even Dunne landed awkwardly on that one. Dunne takes the match to the outside, connecting with a huge moonsault from the middle turnbuckle onto Priest on the floor on the outside. Dunne is able to get a close near fall from a high-angled Liger bomb. Priest sends Dunne flying into the steel ring post before delivering a crucifix powerbomb like a razor's edge for a 2 count there. Priest even delivers an impressive somersault senton, this time nailing Dunne on the outside of the ring. Priest shows off his agility with a top rope Hurricane Rana, followed by a huge choke slam for a near fall. The match does eventually descend into a bit of an all-out fist fight in the centre of the ring, with both men countering each other's signature moves in some real back and forth action to the loud approval of the NXT fans. We even get a fight forever chant from the fans at Full Sail. Dunne attempts a top rope moonsault, only to find Priest's knees for a hard landing there off the moonsault attempt. And with the referee distracted in the corner, Priest delivers a low blow to Dunne before connecting with his the Reckoning for the pinfall victory for Damian Priest. So that was a pretty good match, and it was really fun to see Pete Dunne in the main event of a live NXT on the USA Network. So demonstrating that Triple H and the NXT crew definitely have a lot of trust in the Bruiserweight. However, Damian Priest, he's kind of like a shiny new toy in NXT, and he got the pinfall win here after some crafty heel tactics with a low blow and the Reckoning for the win. So give us your thoughts on this match. I thought the match was pretty good. It went about 15 minutes. I thought Pete Dunne wrestled a really good match, but in the end it was some crafty heel tactics from the shiny new toy Damian Priest, but a good match nonetheless. Give us your thoughts, Ash.
As again, you've proven there, it was another great match from these two individuals. I thought when Pete originally slapped Dane's fingers, I thought he was going to come out at the end of the match and cost Pete the match, but obviously that didn't come to fruition. But hey, it might play out further down the line, but yeah, we'll see. Great, good chemistry between the two. It was quite hard hitting and quite fast paced. It's quite unique to see someone of Priest's size who's 6'4", 6'5", being very agile and hitting a quite good springboard somersault clutch to the outside, which I wasn't expecting from a big man like himself.
That was a good move. Yeah, he kind of flipped off the second rope from inside the ring, going over the top rope. So it's something that we've seen maybe Grand Metalik do or someone of that ilk, but to see Damian Priest do it, I was very impressed. Yeah,
it was very, very impressive. And it just literally, that's how how Priest wins the match as well. It's literally, it cements him as playing the heel character now, where we think he was like the in-between characters between it. He's definitely gone now. He's definitely using the advantage of definitely cheating to win, like Eddie Guerrero, and winning at any need necessary.
Yeah. Yeah, so a really good match to cap off an excellent 2 hours of NXT. So on next week's NXT, we'll be getting a number one contenders match for the I say it's for the NXT Women's Championship. It probably isn't, as you said earlier. You may have corrected me. I don't think it's been announced as a number one contenders match, but Bianca Belair versus Rhea Ripley. You'll be getting the triple threat match. Now, this will be for the North American Championship, with Roddy Strong having to defend his title against two huge monsters in Keith Lee and Dominik Dijakovic, and we know what those two are capable of. And that match will be very special indeed, and can't wait to cover that one, especially on next week's podcast. But for the first time, we've covered AEW before. We've spoken about AEW. We covered Double or Nothing pay-per-view. We've covered AEW All Out pay-per-view from the end of August. We covered that on the 1st of September. But for the first time ever, we're going to be covering AEW Dynamite. So this week's AEW starts with a kind of in furious fashion with SCU. They come out for their tag team tournament match against Best Friends when they are viciously and violently attacked by the Lucha Bros on the rampway. So Pentagon even pile drives Christopher Daniels on the rampway with a violent attack, only coming to an end when Scorpio Sky comes out to make the save. So this was obviously stemming from SCU and the Lucha Brothers confrontation a couple of weeks ago on the first ever Dynamite, when they had that confrontation on the stage, being interviewed by Tony Schiavone. However, this match does still go ahead with Scorpio Sky taking the place of Christopher Daniels alongside Kazarian, of course, adding a bit of a new dynamic to this match with Scorpio wrestling in his street clothes, not fully expecting to be inserted into the match when he was. The Best Friends go after Kazarian and he's injured back after the early attack from Penta and Rey Fenix. The Best Friends even get close to their fall from an assisted vertical suplex. Scorpio Sky even gets the hot tag. He eventually gets the hot tag, but soon gets bundled to the outside where Chucky T delivers an awesome senton over the top rope, unfortunately landed on his own partner. Even Kazarian gets in on the act with a dive over the top rope, followed by a tope con hero from Scorpio Sky, bringing the match back in the favour of SCU. Earlier in the match, Scorpio had his running shoe taken off and thrown into the fans by one of the members of Best Friends. The shoe gets thrown back into the ring, with the referee kicking it back out of the ring, not realising that it belonged to Scorpio Sky. The Best Friends hit their soul food and their kind of half and half suplex combination. Trent Beretta hits a sexy Chucky T, or sexy Chucky knee, I think he calls it, with Chucky and Trent combining with a doomsday flying knee for a close near fall. Trent goes for a pile driver on the ring apron, only to be backdropped on the ring apron by Kazarian. And the end of the match comes when Kazarian and Scorpio Sky combine with a powerbomb dropkick, allowing Kazarian to hook the leg and get the 1-2-3 on Trent Beretta. So much like last week's opener, where Private Party and the Young Bucks had the outstanding opener in the first match of the tag team tournament, this was a great opener and a really great match in the AEW tag team tournament, with another great advert for AEW tag team wrestling, I suppose, which is looking as hot as any other promotion at the moment, certainly in their tag division right now. So Ash, I don't know whether you're much of a fan of AEW or whether this is kind of your first exposure to AEW. But I'd love to know your thoughts on kind of this match, and it was a pretty hot opener, a really good tag match, give us your thoughts on kind of your impression of this match, then, buddy.
I enjoyed the match as a whole. It's quite. I've seen Frankie Kazarian compete before. I've not really seen the others compete before, and quite a lot of the rest of this talent on the card as well. But we're getting the individual matches goes. Overall, I think the match was quite a decent match, but with the whole taking out Christopher Daniels that match, I'm not too sure if he actually had a legit injury, but they give like an update later on, say he only had a stinger, but it's like the only reason he would be taken out of the match is if he had a legit injury, so I'm not too sure what's gone on there. There's one thing that happened in this match I'll bring up in the other tag team title tournament match, is what are the rules with AEW in their tag team matches? Because there's been the way this match ends, and I'll bring up again the other tag team title tournament match, is Kazarian makes a tag while he's on the apron. I'm sure that doesn't class as a tag.
Right. So as opposed to what being in the corner hanging on to the rope, or
no? So he's standing on the apron next to his partner and makes a tag while he's not in the ring.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that's surely not a tag.
I understand. So okay, right. Well, yeah, I think that there are some rule changes when it comes to tag team wrestling in AEW. I know that they've got a 20 count on the outside, and Yeah. That's kind of the main difference between that and what you might find in WWF. It's very similar to the Japanese product and New Japan, where they've got a 20 count on the outside. But I think you spotted something there that nobody else has picked up on, to be honest with you. And it sounds like either the referee wasn't paying attention, or maybe they're a little bit more lax when it comes to kind of tags in and out. Maybe it's kind of a bit more of a fluid lucha style tag wrestling. But I don't know. It's an interesting one. I'll have to go back and watch that again. Good point.
Lucha rules as well. It's literally, as soon as one part of the team gets thrown out, the other man can come in. So it's not lucha rules. So it's literally. I'll bring up the other point later in the
possibly just a botch that the referee didn't notice there, but that's a really good spot there. Moving into the next match, and it's so going back to the first one. So obviously SCU were victorious, and they progressed to the semi-finals of the tag team tournament. We'll talk more about the tag team tournament a bit later on, because we've got a second match from the tournament to cover. But the next match of AEW Dynamite was a bit of a squash, to be honest with you. You had the combination of John Silver and Alex Reynolds, who must be some lower card, maybe some independent guys just coming in for a payday, going up against the former LAX, Santana and Ortiz. So this is Santana and Ortiz's official tag team debut here in AEW, not forgetting their 6-man tag on the premiere of Dynamite a couple of weeks ago, with Santana and Ortiz going by the name of, I think they're possibly going by the name of Proud and Powerful or something like that, but that's certainly what they had on their shirts. Santana and Ortiz take turns in pummeling Silver and Reynolds in this match. The match barely goes 2 or 3 minutes, with Santana and Ortiz nailing their street sleeper double team, which was essentially like a power bomb and neck breaker combination. And this was a great introduction to the former LAX. And I loved their entrance, where you saw them kind of walk through the backstage area prior to making their entrance on the rampway. But this was a good introduction. I think we kind of learned a little bit more about LAX, or Santana and Ortiz, as part of the AEW roster after this match. And it was quite a dominant win and a good introduction to these two individuals. But what were your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, as you said, it's literally a good way of getting. It's literally an enhancement kind of match for Santana and Ortiz, obviously getting them in front of the eyes, well, in front of the AEW audience, and literally the other two. I think their opponents were announced as local enhancement, local talent. So it's literally an enhancement match to literally just get them a bit of momentum, but obviously what plays out after the match kind of sets up what happens at that next pay-per-view.
Yeah, good point. So then we get a brief promo on screen from Le Champion, Chris Jericho, with Jericho sending out a challenge to the Young Bucks for them to face Santana and Ortiz at Full Gear, the pay-per-view in November. Will the challenge be accepted? And if so, that should be one hell of a match. You know, if the Young Bucks, who are no longer part of the tag team tournament, go up against Santana and Ortiz, I'd be tuning in for that one all day long. We then see a vignette showing a more focused and a more driven side of Cody, Don't Call Me Rhodes, as they start the build towards the main event of Full Gear, with Cody taking on Jericho for Jericho's AEW World Championship on November the 9th. This was a really excellent video package, and definitely one of the highlights of the whole show, possibly one of the highlights of the whole week, to be honest with you, with the likes of DDP, Tony Schiavone, Brandy Rhodes, Jim Ross, and someone you don't see very often, if at all. I mean, I've heard about this lady quite a few times, and it's Cody's mother, obviously the wife of the late great Hall of Famer Dusty Rhodes, mother of Dustin Rhodes, mother of Cody, of course. You don't get to see the mother of Cody on screen pulling for her son and kind of saying, how much he wants this AEW title. But it was a really good package. And they're all talking up Cody's chances of beating Chris Jericho for the World Championship on November the 9th. And that's kind of maybe more invested in Cody. That's maybe more invested in this match. At the end of it, I kind of wanted, I'm rooting for Cody to be the new AEW World Champion, but a hell of a video package. And, a lot of thought and a lot of effort went into this. And the amount of faces on there that kind of spoke about Cody and about this match. But I don't know if you kind of had similar thoughts when you saw this one, but what were your thoughts on this video package hyping up their match at Full Gear, essentially?
I enjoyed this video package. It literally, if you've not literally just tuned in, it literally gets you behind the main title feuds. Literally, if you've missed a couple of weeks or have not been aware of the products, this is a good step into the eyes of the company.
Definitely.
Get you behind of why this match is happening. There were several different interesting talking heads throughout this video package. It's like really brings your eyes. As you say, you see Cody's mum for the first time. I wasn't too sure who it was until it came up when it said her name. I thought, okay, this is Cody's mum then. I didn't expect to see her on this. I wasn't too sure if she would be up for doing stuff in wrestling, because I'm not too sure if she's been involved in it before.
I think she's been involved behind the scenes because, of course, Dusty had his own promotion, and she's obviously been involved in wrestling both through her family and through the promotion that she helped to run for many, many years, decades, in fact. But she's never been a very public figure. She's never really, I can't recall seeing her on camera before. She's always been quite a private person. She's always kind of backstage as one of the kind of wrestlers' wives, certainly back in the 70s and the 80s. But it was great to see, and it added a bit more of a personal sentiment to the video package, to be honest with you. And I thought it was fantastic from beginning to end. One of the best things on wrestling TV this week. But we'll move on to our next match then, Ash. So it was Britt Baker versus Rio. So Rio is the current AEW Women's Champion. So I wasn't entirely sure. You might need to correct me here. Was it for the AEW Women's Championship, or was it a non-title match? Do you recall?
It was for the Women's Championship, and I'll bring up a note that was mentioned in commentary.
Yeah,
when I heard it.
Yeah, so I wasn't. I thought it was, but it was kind of like underplayed, really. So I was a little bit surprised, to be honest with you. You may have similar thoughts to see Britt Baker challenging for the championship so soon. I mean, she's kind of like, it's been this figurehead of the AEW women's division. She obviously wasn't involved in the first championship match. That was obviously Nyla Rose and Rio from a couple of weeks ago. But I would have thought they might have held off from giving Britt Baker a championship until maybe Full Gear, until a more of a pay-per-view type thing, because she's always been like the ambassador, or an ambassador going out there talking for AEW and being like the figurehead of the women's division. But I thought they might have held off until a bigger show to kind of give a championship opportunity here. So what were your thoughts? Was you surprised to see Britt Baker challenging so soon?
Yeah, I was. It's literally one of my notes. Is literally, how has Britt Baker got a title shot when she's not won a number one contenders match? I'm thinking, your third week of TV and she's got a title match. I'm thinking, how's this worked? Whereas I know they're doing this whole thing, that AEW are trying to do this whole thing where victories matter at the end of the day in the whole company, and obviously it builds up to you get a title shot. We've talked about that with Darby Allin. He earned a title shot by beating Jimmy Happy in the number one contenders match, so that makes sense. So I don't know where this has come out of. You can build up a match between, say, Britt Baker and B. Priestley, who had the kind of feud going on with AEW, where the winner gets a title shot at the pay-per-view. But for this to come out of nowhere, it's like, okay, they tagged against each other last week, so logic says they go against each other.
The story's a bit shady on this one. The story is a bit shady, but the match starts at a bit of a slow pace. Slow pace, if I can get the words out. I thought there was some quite sloppy groundwork to start off with. It didn't really seem to mesh very well to start off with until Ryu escapes a pinning attempt with a Matrix style bridge into a standing position. Britt Baker then nails a TKO and a single leg drop kick for a 2 count of her own. Baker then executes a swinging fisherman neckbreaker and a super kick for a very close near fall, and that got a reaction from the fans, and this is where the match started to pick up a little bit. Ryu gets a 2 count from a Northern Light suplex. Baker escapes a single leg Boston Crab before Ryu gets a 2 count from a top rope double stomp. Britt Baker thought she had the match won, but Britt Baker couldn't quite fully apply her lockjaw submission move, with Ryu using all of her experience and grittiness to roll Baker back into like a crucifix pinning attempt for the 1, 2, 3. So the win kind of came out of nowhere. The match definitely got warmed up. It definitely got going towards the end. Their groundwork was a little bit messy, in my opinion, to start the match, but they did tell a good story with Ryu showing a lot of grit and determination, and Baker eventually losing out to the more experienced Ryu in a fun women's championship match. I don't think it's the best women's match that they've had on AEW. It's getting mixed reviews online, so a lot of people are saying it's fantastic. I personally think it was a little bit sloppy, but it just didn't seem to join up the dots for me. But Ash, I'll be interested to know your thoughts on this one.
I concur, really. I felt early doors, I think there was an arm drag that Rio hit, which was quite sloppy. It felt they weren't clicking as much, but as the match grew on, it progressed very well. And how there were several different spots in the match where it actually it smoothly can transition into itself.
Yeah.
And how the mid-match ended in a roll through from the I was just trying to think, it's like a cross-face mandible claw, isn't it? Britt Baker kind of finisher.
That's right. Yeah.
It was quite a unique finish. It's like how the roll through wins. I think they try to play Ryu as the plucky younger dog who will get the win out of nowhere.
Yeah.
There's a couple of points that I picked up on commentary as well. When they came up, what were your thoughts on the AEW's women's title as a whole, as the design of it?
I've not had a close look at it. I mean, it's not grotesque. It's not disastrous like the 24/7 bout or possibly the Universal Championship, but it's all right. It's I suppose it can be described as a pretty looking bout. It's all right. It's an improvement on some bouts that I've seen, and I think like the men's championship bout, the AEW World Title, that's quite a good looking bout as well. And I think the women's one is similar, but I think it's all right. But I've not studied it closely, but I think it's okay.
Yeah, I think I've heard mixed reviews about it. It's not the design of it; it's just the size of it. It just looks so small.
Right.
When you see it on Rio, you can see how it looks like it was designed for her compared to other people. Because when you see it on her body and it picks up on commentary, they say the belt looks quite big on her. It's like how it's been snuck around. It's like on its last buckle to get around her waist.
Yeah.
So I think there might have been slipped off. And there was another thing I picked up on commentaries when they started the match. I think it might have been a bit of a slip up. Excalibur said this is the first match of the AEW Women's Championship. I think you mean it's her first title defense, because I think she won the title in the title match to crown a champion.
Yeah.
So I think someone didn't get into in Excalibur's ear to make sure this is the first title defense, not title match. I think that's a slip up. I think which they can try make sure it doesn't happen again further down the line.
Yeah, I think
they corrected later on, saying obviously built up to the Jericho's title defense. It's his first title defense.
Correct.
But it's something they've picked up and think, okay, we need to make sure this doesn't happen again.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly wasn't the biggest gaffe on commentary during the whole show, and I think we get to something that quite infuriated me in the next match. But the next match was another match within the AEW Tag Team Tournament, and it was the Jurassic Express. This time it was Jungle Boy and Marco Stunt going up against the Lucha Brothers, and so no Luchasaurus in this match as he suffered an injury earlier on in the day, with Marco Stunt taking Luchasaurus' place at the last minute, with Stunt and Jungle Boy going up against possibly the best tag team in the world today. And you have to think that without the size and the power of Luchasaurus, the much smaller combination of Stunt and Jungle Boy might have to pull out all of their tricks to have any chance of the win in this match. But before the match started, Penta gets on the mic where he asks where Luchasaurus is. He calls Stunt and Jungle Boy Babysauruses before the referee pulls the microphone out of Rey Fenix's hand to signal the match to get underway. Otherwise, he could have been there all day throwing comments at the smaller Jungle Boy and Marco Stunt. So Stunt and Jungle Boy did combine quite well and get some surprise offense in on the Lucha Brothers, despite their obvious shortcomings. Their offense doesn't last for long, however. Both are dropped with a series of super kicks. Stunt does manage to kick out of a pump handle driver from Pentagon, so that kind of shocked the Lucha Brothers and the fans. I think they were expecting that to be it because it was such a powerful move. Jungle Boy was suffering from an attack on the outside. Marco Stunt then gets pummeled in the ring with an array of stiff chops and kicks from the Lucha Brothers. Jim Ross's commentary. Now, we mentioned about Excalibur's commentary earlier, but Jim Ross's commentary in this match really frustrated me, infuriated me, it really wound me up, with him constantly calling Jungle Boy Jungle Jack. Now, I went online and had a moan about this on Twitter and on Facebook. None of the other commentators are calling Jungle Boy Jungle Jack. Now, Jack might be his real name. He's kind of shoot name outside of the wrestling world. Obviously, he's the son of the former Beverly Hills 90210 actor Luke Perry. So we know that his name is Jack Perry, but his name is not Jungle Jack, Jim Ross. It's Jungle Boy. I think we know that. And I felt for Excalibur, because you may have noted, Ashley, where Excalibur, every time Jim Ross said Jungle Jack, Excalibur felt the need to kind of jump in and say Jungle Boy. So I think he was probably pissing off his fellow commentators there. The match did come to an end with a double foot stomp package pile driver combo from the Lucha Brothers onto Marco Stunt, allowing Pentagon to get the relatively easy pin and to progress to the semi-finals of the tournament. So you can't help but think that the Jurassic Express might have stood a better chance had the Luchasaurus been part of this match. However, it wasn't to be. It was an entertaining match. Obviously, you had the plucky underdogs, and you had the kind of very cocky, experienced heels. But it certainly makes the Lucha Brothers red hot favourites for the tag team tournament and to take the titles, with the Young Bucks no longer part of the tournament. So as it stands, the semi-final looks like this. So you've got 4 teams in the semi-final. You've got the Lucha Brothers obviously progressing. They're going to be facing Private Party to see, obviously, in the first semi-final. And then you got earlier winners in the first match, SCU going up against the Dark Order. The Dark Order, obviously, they received a bye through to the semi-finals after their win in their match at All Out in August. So what were your thoughts on this match? Kind of a bit of a makeshift combo of Marco Stunt and Jungle Boy going up against the Lucha Brothers in a fairly entertaining match. But I'd love to know your thoughts on this.
I enjoyed this match as a whole. It was quite good offense by both teams. Literally showcasing their being talents in and outside the ring. Several different tag team offense by both teams. As I brought up earlier, there'd been in the other tag team tournament title match about tag rules. At the end of this match, a similar thing happens. I think Pentagon's standing in the corner. Phoenix is legal. They make a tag inside the ring. What's going on here? As I said earlier, what's the tag rules going on in AEW? Yeah. Whereas you see in the next match, there's consistent tags in and out from competitor in the ring to competitor outside the ring. So I'm not too sure what's going on with these rules.
I'm going to be paying closer attention. I'm going to be watching some of these matches a bit closer, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting because as soon as this happened, I saw it. What's going on here? This is the second match now in this tournament on the same night where they've had obscure tags going on and rule plays going on, which I'll bring up in the main event as well, which kind of peeved me a bit.
Yeah.
But overall, it's going forward in the tournament. I kind of see where they can go with this, but I have my ideas where it can go and where I want it to go and where it could lead to.
Well, let's talk about that. I mean, give us your predictions. There's only 4 teams left. Obviously, on one side of the draw, you've got Lucha Brothers and Private Party. On the other side of the draw, you've got SCU versus the Dark Order. Now, we obviously saw a bit of a storyline going on earlier between Lucha Brothers and SCU, so potentially that would make a good final. Or you could have the underdogs Private Party pull out another surprise win. Maybe SCU gets involved in their match next week, leading to a Private Party win. And, I don't know. I mean, the Dark Order, they got a bye. Having won their match at All Out, so it's interesting that they were automatically entered into the tournament at semi-final stage. I don't know too much about the Dark Order, but where's your kind of money on regarding those 4 teams? What do you think?
I'll say what my head, what I would think logically, if they're building it up, is Lucha Brothers to win. But with what happened last week, I can see Private Party picking up another upset win on an established team to build up this underdog story of like the rank outsiders, the so-called 8 seeds in the 7/8 seeds in the tournament to go on to win the whole tournament.
Yeah,
I could see them going against Dark Order in the final, where you can see SCU costing Luchas their spot in the title tournament, and then vice versa, and you can set up a match between Luchas and SCU at Full Gear to determine number 1 contenders. Possibly.
There you go. Nice bit of fantasy booking in there. So yeah, I'd say I think there's many different ways that this could go. And I think the first of the semi-final matches is next week, with the second taking place the following week, and then of course you've got Full Gear the week after. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens, buddy. But speaking of tag matches, we do get I think it's our fourth tag match in this show, and it's Pac and Jon Moxley going up against Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page. So Jon Moxley gets a superstar reception from the fans in Philadelphia, as you would expect. Now, Pac and Jon Moxley, they make a bit of an unlikely duo. They appear to work quite well in the early stage of this match. Let's just say that. But Omega nails a couple of Snapdragon suplexes on Pac and Moxley to liven up the crowd, followed by an excellent tope con hero onto Pac on the outside. Moxley got in on the act with a dive of his own onto Pac. However, Hangman executes a brilliant moonsault from the top turnbuckle onto the heels on the outside, completing the array of high-flying devil ship there. So there's another huge dive from Hangman, nailing Pac through the ropes, this time into the barricade. Moxley and Omega then go at it with huge lefts and rights and headbutts in the ring. Moxley turns Omega inside out with a massive lariat as the match goes up another notch. Then the weapons come out. Omega finds a broom wrapped in barbed wire. Moxley uses a barbed wire baseball bat, and with Pac disarming his partner, Jon Moxley, of his weapon, not wanting to risk disqualification. Moxley reacts as you would expect, only Moxley to react with the double bird and I think it was a kick and a dirty deed to his own partner Pac before walking out on his partner and walking out of the match, leaving Pac all on his lonesome. So Pac then gets nailed with a wicked lariat. Omega strikes with a V trigger. Page finishes the match, and Pac off with the dead eye for the pinfall victory, allowing Page to get his victory back after he's lost to Pac a couple of weeks ago. And that was a pretty good match between these four of the best. And any goodwill that there might have been between Pac and Jon Moxley at the beginning of the match certainly went out the window towards the end there, as Moxley turned on his own partner. However, this match did further set up Moxley and Omega, which we'll be getting in a few weeks at Full Gear on November the 9th, another pay-per-view match there. So quite an entertaining match, plenty to talk about. What were some of the highlights for you then, Ash?
I overly enjoyed this match. I think that I enjoyed for the time being, tag team offense between Pac and Moxley, just working on Page. This literally before we end up getting the hot tag to Omega, who and then had a great flow of offense against both Pac and Moxley. When I was watching this match, I was trying to think, okay, I can only see this going one way. I don't see either Moxley or Pac taking the loss. But when Pac took the loss, I thought, okay, this is interesting, because obviously it sets up what happens next week as well.
Yeah.
I was trying to think, okay, because obviously the reason why Pac, I think, didn't originally start in AEW was because of this whole thing when he was Dragon Gate champion, where they didn't want him to lose any match while he was their champion.
Yeah.
Their champion. So it's like the reason why their original match between Pac and Hangman didn't happen was because he was champion and they didn't want him to lose on pay-per-view.
Yeah, something like that, wasn't it? Yeah, you're quite right.
Yeah. So literally, I thoroughly enjoyed this match. It's like great match between the four competitors in this match. I can't even go. I've got stubborn words to go now. It's just literally a great match to end all.
Yeah, no, it was. And like I say, it furthered quite a few storylines. It furthered, Moxley and Omega, which we're going to be getting in a few weeks at Full Gear. And like I say, interesting to see how Moxley turned on his own partner because he didn't want to risk disqualification with Moxley using his barbed wire baseball bat. So, but for what it was a good match. But moving on to the main event of the show. And Chris Jericho putting his AEW World Championship on the line against number one contender Darby Allin. So Darby Allin, as you rightly mentioned earlier, Ron Ash became number one contender after beating Jimmy Havoc in a number one contenders match last week. So then soon after the match was announced, it was billed as a Philadelphia street fight. This is the third. I think it is the third match that Jericho's had in just 3 weeks. So he's been on every single episode of Dynamite, and he's wrestled in every single episode of Dynamite. I think the first time episode 1 was a 6-man tag. Last week was a tag match, if I'm not mistaken. This week he's defended his championship one-on-one against Darby Allin. So I suppose you can't get too much of a good thing, especially when it comes to Le Champion, Chris Jericho. So I'd say Darby Allin has only been a pro wrestler for 4 years, I think, and he's starting to build a really good fan base, especially in the short time that he's been competing in AEW. And as I said, he received his title shot after beating Jimmy Havoc last week. So remember, this is a Philadelphia street fight, so anything goes. Darby Allin takes the match to the outside with a dive through the ropes onto Jericho on the rampway. Jericho then launches Allin through the ropes to the outside, with Allin appearing to land quite heavily and injuring himself. Jericho then performs a catapult with Allin's head and neck underneath the guard railing, and that looked pretty painful, getting a great reaction from the fans though. A kendo stick then comes into play as Jericho uses it to bash Darby Allin's back. Jericho then gets a roll of duct tape, which he uses to tape up Darby Allin's hands behind his back, effectively hog-tying Darby Allin before Jericho starts to throw the challenger around the ring. Darby Allin does get in some offense, surprisingly, even with his hands taped behind his back, including a springboard moonsault and a tope con hero through the ropes onto Jericho to the outside, all with his hands taped behind his back, remember. Allin even gets a close near fall from it almost appeared like a phoenix splash to the loud approval from the fans. Jericho brings Allin's skateboard into the ring before hitting a double underhook onto the skateboard for a 2 count, and that looked really painful. And just as Darby Allin was about to make a comeback with another move from the top turnbuckle, we see Jake Hager appear from out of nowhere to push Allin off the top turnbuckle, allowing Jericho to put on the Lion Tamer once again for the submission win. So this match was a really great opportunity to make a new star out of Darby Allin. And as predicted on a previous episode of this podcast, I think AEW have really big things in store for Darby Allin. But thanks to Jericho using the tape to tie up Allin's hands behind his back, and the interference from Jake Hager, the odds were certainly against Darby Allin here. As Le Champion, Chris Jericho wins the AEW World Championship, or he retains his championship, and the show goes off the air with the Inner Circle standing in the ring celebrating Jericho's win with a little bit of bubbly. So Ash, this was full of drama, full of action. I think that the fans were certainly kind of more behind Darby Allin when he had his hands tied behind his back or taped behind his back, but certainly it added an extra element to the match. I thought it was a fun match and a really good way to end the show, and I thought Chris Jericho was excellent. I'll say forever and a day that he's possibly the best heel in the business at the moment, and a good outing for Darby Allin as well. But I'd love to know your thoughts.
I'll go into what I liked about the match before what I didn't like about the match.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the match as a whole. The offense that Darby Allin did when he had his hands behind his back, I was really impressed, especially how he climbed the ropes for the turnbuckles without using his arms. How he's got the being core strength to do that with just using his legs was just astound me.
Yeah,
that was just really impressive, and the offense he did as well. Even he hit, I think, springboard moonsault without using his using his hands.
How?
Exactly. How have you done this? How have you done this? That is I think that is such a hard thing to do without using your arms, because you think Jericho, when he hits the lion salt, he uses his arms to get his balance, to get his momentum over. To do that without no arms, that is just astounding.
Yeah.
Now, the downside to this match, there was two. This is a Philadelphia street fight, which means no disqualifications, no count out, correct?
That's what they told us, yeah.
Twice in this match, Chris Jericho has Darby Allin in the walls of Jericho. Darby Allin gets to the rope. Referee starts doing a 5 count. This is no disqualification. You do not do that. This bugbears me twice throughout the thing. This is no disqualification. Why are you doing this? It just cancels the heat for your heel character, where he's sustaining damage to an opponent where he doesn't have to let go of the hold.
Yeah, I noticed the same thing. It's a no DQ match, but then they're accounting for a rope break. I mean, Jericho really, had he thought about it, should have just kept the move on because, in theory, he shouldn't have been disqualified because of the stipulation of the match.
Yeah.
But and unless the only stipulation of the match is anything goes apart from rope breaks, where we have to kind of count the 5, you have to break. But yes, so you're quite right. I spotted that as well, and I think that's a little bit of a botch there on behalf of the officials.
I think one thing Jericho can say is Jericho could have said, "It's a no disqualification match, you idiot."
Yes.
What are you going to do? Disqualify me for having
He could have added into the list.
Yeah. And the other thing that I do enjoy about this match, as proven earlier, we've discussed about NXT UK with Joe Coffey not getting involved in their match in the tag team title match. Jack Hager comes out towards the end of the match to theoretically help Jericho win, where he didn't need him throughout the match. He didn't even come down to ringside. He just came out of nowhere and attacked Darby Allin. Just as Jericho's to get the win at the end of it. Yeah. So it's like, I understand you're trying to build Jericho as the big heel champion, but I don't think he needs Hensman where he needs to help cheat him to win. I think he's capable of doing it on his own, because I think he could have easily got the win without there being assist from Hager in the end.
Especially with his opponent having his hands tied behind his back.
Yeah.
I mean, he already had the advantage there straight away. But I'm wondering if it will play into a future storyline, whether Darby Allin, might get a rematch. Who knows? Whether it be mentioned ever again on Dynamite. Hopefully for continuity. Hopefully they'll bring it up on next week's show and have some sort of stipulation where, if anybody comes out during a Jericho match in the future, then he automatically loses the championship. I don't know whether this was another rule change where championships can change hands on a disqualification in AEW. I'm probably just imagining that, but there were so many kind of like little rule changes they brought in around the time of Double or Nothing, their first big pay-per-view in May. But anyway, it doesn't matter because Chris Jericho did retain in the end. It was quite a dramatic match. I think we were all rooting for Darby Allin towards the end of it. What were your overall thoughts on AEW Dynamite? I mean, had you seen the previous 2 episodes, and what did you think of this one?
I've seen the other 2 episodes. I think certain matches in this weren't up to standards improved. In fact, as we said, the women's title match, I felt it was weaker than compared to what happened on the first episode. But there's I've pointed out 7 different things, but obviously I think other parts of this episode highlighted the strengths of AEW, especially like the video package leading for Jericho and Cody towards Full Gear was quite very well done. Yes. And certain spots in matches, especially with Darby Allin in his match, and I'm trying to think now. That's it, really. And other matches were quite unique, and obviously it's progressing storylines throughout the tag team tournament and also other feuds going throughout. But one of the things that I feel is a little bit weak so far in AEW is the women's scene.
Okay.
There's not been so far, as you've already pointed out, with Jericho being on every single episode. You've had Britt Baker on every single episode, not competing in all 3. And also Rio competing in all 3.
Yeah.
So there's not much depth showing off the women's talent so far there on AEW. I would like to see a bit more from what's on their roster.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
Build up more chances for Rio to compete against.
Otherwise, you're just going to get the same wrestlers fighting over and over, aren't you? Really, but I think as I mentioned earlier, the one mistake they made really was having Britt Baker, who's been this like figurehead kind of ambassador for the women's division on AEW from day one. She was brought out when they had their first press meeting, kind of when they had the open air conference. Britt Baker was brought out as like the first member of the AEW women's roster, so she's kind of been a bit of a figurehead for the AEW women's division ever since day one, really. And I would have thought that it would have been a bigger match and a more important match had they have held off her championship opportunity until Full Gear, or maybe another pay-per-view down the line, and maybe allow Ryu to, if she's going to wrestle, then let her wrestle somebody that's less established, and leave Britt Baker to a bigger occasion. They seem to be. I know NXT could be blamed for kind of pulling out all the stops and pulling out the big guns and all the big matches, but I felt that Britt Baker, it wasn't really, there was no build to it, there was no story behind it, there was no real reason why she was made number one contender. She hadn't really won a one-on-one match to win her right to compete against Ryu for the championship, but it happened anyway. So a little bit of, continuity error there, especially when they're saying that wins and losses matter, and that if you win and win a win, you're going to get a championship opportunity. And Britt Baker tended to get, she appeared to get her championship opportunity almost out of nothing, exactly as you said. So yeah, there's obviously some gaps in there. Continuity there. What the highlights for me, you mentioned about the video package, I thought it was absolutely fantastic, but the tag matches, I thought that where the AEW women's division possibly hasn't got the depth, I think their tag division definitely does have the depth, and I think their tournament to crown the first ever AEW tag champs has been absolutely fantastic. I've really enjoyed all the matches. They've not only had great action but good stories behind them as well, but that's definitely where I think they've got their strengths and weaknesses at the moment. Is the tag division's definitely a thumbs up, women's division maybe a thumbs in the middle, possibly a thumbs down, but I want to see a bit more of Nyla Rose. I thought Nyla Rose was excellent in her match against Ryu a couple of weeks ago on episode 1 of Dynamite, and I want to see more of her. I think she's a character that I can definitely get behind, whether as a babyface or as a heel. Because we've got the Wednesday night wars now, Ashleigh, between NXT and AEW Dynamite, of course, going head to head, and there's this ratings war. How would you rate the two shows? So if which show would you say was the better of the two? Would you go for NXT over AEW, or would you go for AEW over NXT based on this week's episodes? What would you say?
Oh, that's a hard one to say. I think storyline wise, I'll say NXT, because I felt they've built up storylines throughout their whole depth of roster, whereas you've got like several different characters challenging for, as we pointed out in the women's division, we've had 2 matches from the women's division, and 4 people out of those matches either competing or fall out of the matches are going towards the title feud. Whereas AEW's women's division, you've had a title match which has come out of nowhere. So that's where I think NXT's done well this week. But I think it's 50-50 for in-ring action. I think it's a toss-up. I think the tag team matches on AEW were quite good, were very good, and the 2 matches between Keith Lee, Dijakovic, and Pete Dunne and Damien Priest were quite good as well. So I think it's a tie for in-win quality, but I think I don't want to stick on the fence, but I have to stick on the fence because I think it's a 50-50 cut between down the middle.
Yeah.
Of which ones I enjoyed.
It's tricky, isn't it? And I'm kind of, undecided as to whether to go for a tie, a 50-50 split, which would be, I'm going to put my neck out on the line. I'm going to say it was a better show for AEW this week, and I'll give you my reasons why. I think that the video package with building up the Cody match against Jericho at Full Gear, I think that was really well done. I love all the interviews, and it was all about Cody, but Cody never said a word in that entire video package. It was all about the more serious side, the more behind the scenes side of Cody, the more focused side of Cody, and everybody else did the talking for him and summed up Cody's mentality and kind of the build to that match very, very well. I thought that was absolutely fantastic. The other reason why I'm going for AEW this week, I thought that the tag matches were fantastic and some really good stories behind them. And I really enjoyed the main event as well. I thought that especially Jericho kind of making a star out of Darby Allin, to be honest with you. I liked the drama. I liked, the bit where Darby Allin he had to fight, with his hands literally tied behind his back, and you're still making a good match of it for Jericho. And I think Jericho at the moment is possibly the best thing going in professional wrestling, with all of his catchphrases and his heel character, and he's pulling out some good matches as well. And I think that the way he's evolved his character again into this current Judas Jericho, you could say, is possibly one of his best incarnations, and I think that it's working really, really well for him, and it's working really, really well for AEW. So I think that because of Jericho, the tag titles and that video package for Cody, I've got to give it to AEW. Although it's a close call, NXT was great. Loved the Keith Lee and Dijakovic match, although I don't think it was their best match. And I really loved all the women's division action, the return of Tommaso Ciampa. But I really enjoyed the main event as well, Pete Dunne versus Damian Priest. That could well have been the match of the night on NXT. For me, it certainly ended in really, really, good fashion. But I'm going to give the edge to AEW, and I'm becoming a big fan of Dynamite. I think they're producing some really good stuff, and I think the other thing that possibly sways it for me, and I think I'm not the only one to say this, is the extra atmosphere you're getting in AEW shows, because you've got the larger audience, you've got the bigger arenas. Instead of being in front of 300 or 400 people in Full Sail, they're performing in front of 7, 8, 9, 10,000 people in arenas, which I think is giving you the perception of it being bigger, and giving you the perception of it being better as well, if that makes sense. Or that possibly isn't, like I say, the in-ring quality is possibly better as a whole on NXT, but you get the perception that AEW is bigger and better because of the atmosphere that's been, given off by the thousands of people as opposed to the hundreds of people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I've heard in talks going on, can we see NXT doing 3 weeks of work of TV in Full Sail, then do a monthly episode in, say, an arena? It could possibly work, but it's just seeing logistically if they can do it. I could see them doing it for possibly lead up to, say, a takeover. They can do like the go home show into a big one, say have like talent who are not up on the takeover card performing in front of a bigger audience, get London to get in front of more eyes and develop their characters and get their characters across to newer fans. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think that would be, just testing the waters to see whether that'll work or not. But I think, as much as some weeks I'm a fan of the Full Sail audience, some weeks I'm not such a fan of the Full Sail audience, but they certainly have been a part of the journey and a part of the story of NXT and a part of their success as well. But I think that they might need to experiment with going outside of Full Sail into bigger arenas, not massive arenas. I mean, I've even said on our Facebook group that if they tried the Manhattan Center where they used to do Monday Night Raw, or the old ECW arena in Philadelphia, somewhere, just to kind of give a bit of a different vibe and a different feel in front of a different audience. And I think that could be interesting for the viewing audience on TV anyway. But Ashleigh, that brings us to an end of this podcast. We've spoken about NXT UK, we've spoken about NXT, we've spoken about AEW, 3 really, really good shows. If you haven't seen any one of those 3, I definitely urge you to go out and watch them. But Ash, I just want to thank you for coming on the podcast this week. You've been an absolute superstar. Cheers there, John. Nice to be back on the podcast. I hope you'll be back on soon.
You certainly will be. So, please keep it tuned to the Wrestling with Jonas podcast for all of your weekly NXT, NXT UK and AEW reviews, including WWE pay-per-view reviews and AEW pay-per-view reviews and so much more. And if you've enjoyed listening to this podcast, please don't forget to spread the word. Tell your friends and tell your family. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and just share the good word about the Wrestling with Jonas podcast. So don't miss a single episode. Hit that subscribe button now. Our next episode I'm going to be recording tomorrow. I've got a special interview with former WWF AWA, not AEW, but AWA and NWA and WCW ring announcer Gary Michael Capetta. So you may know Gary Michael Capetta from when he used to introduce Sting, and he was the guy that introduced Sting with This Is Sting and all them other famous ring introductions. from the 70s, 80s and early 90s. So I can't wait to speak to Gary Michael Capetta, and the interview with him will be dropping around about 8 o'clock UK time on Sunday the 20th of October. So look out for that one. And thank you to Ash. Thank you to everybody that's listened. Hope you all have a fantastic weekend and a good week to come. And in the meantime, take care and speak to you all soon.